All right, Mr. Clean is on the scene here at the Black Lives Matter thing going on. Let's see what's happening. I unfortunately missed, they had this talk at Sage Hall, and I missed that because my camera crew didn't show. But now I'm here if I can figure out where it is. I believe it's this way. Let's hurry. I think I'm late. There's a tunnel there. There's bathrooms there. Where is the event? Where are the signs? Where are the... Oh wait, as I remember, you go up stairs here. Here we go, I think I got it. Yes, this is it. It's in the library. Hi. Good to see you. That's a gentleman that I used to work on the Board of Election with until I showed up drunk one morning and they kicked me off. Oh, here's a fellow producer. So it looks like he's got the real Pegasus cameras. So maybe I can get his footage and cut it into a special. All right, the thing that I missed at Sage Hall, this gentleman was there. What did you think about it?
It had a broad spectrum of people from various walks of life who had come to learn more information about Dr. King's legacy and Black Lives Matter. And they have different opinions, but I think it's good that people get to hear for themselves so that they can make up their own minds. And they will make intelligent decisions.
Sorry I missed it, but maybe I can get my fellow producers' footage. Now, behind the scenes elements, I helped my fellow producer set up with a white balance sheet. So he has to zero in. With this, I've got to get camera people and stuff. So I would just, actually my t-shirt would probably be good enough. But see, he's zeroing in on the white balance. And there's all sorts of technical aspects. That's why I need people to come down and do my camera work, because I'm just Mr. Clean. All these years I've been doing, well, actually just a couple of years now, I've been doing the editing, producing, directing, camera work. What's that? Oh, sorry. I better concentrate on what I'm doing. I'll get back to you with more on this later. All right, more and more people are filtering in. Looks like we got a good turnout. I remember this one gentleman from a film that another sistering station in Albany, I think it was, did. Oh, other cameras? Looks like this might be IC. I'm not sure. People are filtering in. Oh, I ought to see. I ought to check. Say, what'd y'all filter for?
The Ithaca.
Ithaca College?
Yeah.
Oh, right! The sister station. Can we get your footage?
Sure.
Maybe. Thank you. What Channel 13 is doing a thing here, and I'm doing for mine is more of an entertainment show, but I might do a special. So maybe we could combine all footages. He's got like a dead-on center shot.
Hey.
This gentleman here. They're doing
So you're shooting for?
Ithaca College.
Oh, nice. Okay. Do you have any means to pick up audio?
Yeah. I have a microphone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was hoping they use some mics so we can plug into a board, but I don't see anything set up, so it's going to be kind of boomy in here.
Yeah,
That's kind of a problem.
I guess we'll just do our best. Kind of hope for the best.
So maybe we can all share footage. Well, nobody will want mine because it's jumping all over the place, but I'm definitely my ears and.
It's good.
Did you go see it?
I've seen it. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, I'm happy one night.
All right, good turnout. It's almost time. What I think I do for the actual event, I'm going to rely on Tom's footage and my sister station's IC students' footage. Or IC station, I don't even know if they're students, they have a professional college station. Because that's what Pegasus stands for, Public Educational Government Systems. So we're the public arm, Channel 13, And then there's the government arm, which is just does city council meetings and that sort of thing. And then there is the educational arm, which is IC. Tom was just saying that Cornell has a good production stuff. I don't know why they're not on television themselves. So I guess I'll just get back to, oh no, actually I think I'll film and then I can cut in that additional footage like I normally do. I noticed at least 5 to 8 of my fellow Quakers that we're on the cutting edge of everything that's ever accomplished. Good. Get back. A Quaker is there somewhere. Quaker friends here. There's some Quaker friends there. Oh wait, I lost them, but I counted at least 8. And of course, me. I tend to be the exception of Quakerism, if you will. It is now beginning.
We don't have a microphone, so bear with us. We're going to try to speak loud. Those in the back who can't hear me, please let me know. Please let any of us know if you can't hear what's being said. I'm going to invite Jody in.
That will be followed by a more thorough explanation of what BLM Ithaca is. Once again, thank you for coming.
Hi everybody, so my name is Namba Sango, and I'm going to do a piece entitled Perfect Dark about the lack of representation in the video games and cartoons and comic books that I consumed as a child, and how it affected me as a Black woman. Black girls want to have a hero too. All kids trying to get that mirror view. Cartoons gotta represent my hue. It got our doctors sick, they want the thera flu. Black girls want to have a hero too. All kids trying to get that mirror view. Cartoons gotta represent my hue. It got our doctors sick, they want the thera flu. Yeah, while Dora exploring, it was important from Gore, and now 400 years later, they kinda saw out the story. When they couldn't ignore us, they gave us Bishop and Barrett. But we're the women with origins from a black colored parent. We gotta
a microphone, a megaphone, a sub-amp, speakers, loud like 20 degrees yelling outside of a police encampment in Minneapolis. Loud like 500 strong in Baltimore, throwing stones into windows. Loud like our lives depended on it. Loud like cry of the mother at the door who is just getting the news and can barely stand. Blow to the stomach, has her head in her hands, remembering that her daughter's smile like two butterflies dancing in the sun. In Cleveland, a mother holds her 12-year-old son. Loud like the sound of her 14-year-old sister being tackled to the ground, running towards her brother's body. The skull hard against the pavement in Texas. After a routine traffic stop, she was on her way to her new job in peer review. BB guns the way we used to when we were kids. The way a child ought to. Playing in a Cleveland City Park, hands on his waist, imagining for a moment that he was a police officer. Police officers say things like, get out of the car or I will light you up. Do things like arrest black women in the streets for failure to turn signal. Do things like pull up to a 12-year-old boy and drive by, shoot him in broad daylight. Do things like murder black women in police custody. When the failed indictments came, I was standing alone in an empty room, painted in a wash of numbness. My body was a deflated balloon in a straight jacket without the straps, and I could do nothing but scream. Loud, like rubber bullets in Ferguson. Fire in the belly of the beast, Babylon in blistered nuance. Black squeezes esophagus. This ends today. This ends today. This ends today. Never have we screamed so loud, like agony, like war, like moan in the eye of the storm. Rain teardrops against cheek, enough water for a family in Flint, Michigan. America is not listening. How many times must we scream, Black Lives Matter, loud enough for the murderers to hear? Because it matters. When a videotape of Laquan McDonald shot 16 times in Chicago was kept from the public for over a year. That 3 years of footage from Cedric Chapman gunned down on the Chicago City block, that took 3 years for footage of Cedric Chapman gunned down on a Chicago City block that was kept from the public. Because it matters that this past January, Guyana McMillan was found dead in her cell in Kentucky. There is no metaphor for that. There is protest in the heartbeat of black women waking up in the morning. Black men remind us to stay woke, but can't even acknowledge the violence disproportionately affecting cis and queer and trans black women. Say her name loud, like the cells opening in rifles. Women with ribbons in their hair. Wind tunnel vision. If freedom was a candle whose brilliance lay just beyond the darkness, there is protest in living, and telling your mother that you love her on a cell phone just before your battery dies out. And screaming loud, so loud that America cracks open. Black Lives Matter was founded by 3 black queer women in 2012 after the acquittal of George Zimmerman, who killed a 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. In their own words, rooted in the experience of black people in this country who actively resist our dehumanization, Black Lives Matter is a call to action and a response to the virulent anti-Black racism that permeates our society. When we say Black Lives Matter, we are broadening the conversation around state violence to include all of the ways in which Black people are intentionally left powerless at the hands of the state. We are talking about the ways in which Black lives are deprived of basic human rights and dignity. Black Lives Matter became a national outcry in 2014 after the non-indictments of Darren Wilson, who killed 18-year-old Michael Brown. In Ithaca, BLM work has been done as far back as 2010, when the Sean Greenwood working group was, where Sean Greenwood was fatally shot by an on-duty police officer. The Sean Greenwood working group was formed in response to state violence directed at Black and brown people. There have been many protests, rallies, and candlelit vigils. In August 2015, a contingency of Ithaca residents organized by Nicole LaFleur were able to attend the Black Lives Matter convening in Ohio. The trip energized our commitment to the national movement for Black liberation in this country. In July, the very first Black Lives Matter Day of Healing was organized at Congo Square Market. In October, the first Black Lives Matter teach-in in Ithaca was organized at BJM. We have come a long way since then. Today we are announcing the formation of Black Lives Matter Ithaca. BLMI will address the many dynamics of Ithaca which launch a continual assault on Black lives. These include, but are not limited to, poor housing, gentrification, food insecurity, policing, job discrimination, white supremacy, class oppression, violence against women, LGBTQ oppression, and everything else that degrades Black lives. BLMI is a grassroots organization of the people, and we intend to keep it that way. Rather than act as gatekeepers to resources or ambassadors of our community, remaining distant from the voices of the people, we hope to build a movement from the bottom up. This is how we believe effective, sustainable, democratic movements are created. Rather than remain quiet and even complacent in racism and white supremacy in this town, we say it is time for a different organization. BLMI is concerned with Black lives, including women, queer, poor, and working class people of color. We want to be accountable to the realities of our people rather than to the pursuit of respectability.
Modest beginnings, but we're excited and we're energized to see so many committed anti-racists fellowshipping with us and committing to building this movement together. The main contradiction of Black life today is, on one hand, legal equality and superficial inclusion, and on the other hand, economic uncertainty and political and social exclusion. On one hand, a Black president and a Black elite class deeply enmeshed with the power structure On the other hand, masses of African Americans living insecure lives without access to fair and decent health care, housing, education, or jobs, and whole families, entire generations, crushed by a racist prison system. On one hand, a society that crows about how it has overcome racism, and on the other hand, a barrage of anti-black violence and police terrorism. It is this paradox that has produced the national Black Lives Matter movement, sparked by the brutal and unpunished killing of Trayvon Martin, galvanized by the uprising in Ferguson, Missouri. The national Black Lives Matter movement has become one of the most powerful grassroots struggles for human rights in our time. Begun as a response to state violence, the movement has expanded to address the crisis of mass imprisonment and other forms of racist violence. Now, a group of Black organizers from all walks of life have come together to form Black Lives Matter Ithaca. A formal political organization loosely tied to the larger Black Lives Matter network, but committed to addressing problems especially relevant to Black residents of Ithaca and Tompkins County. Black Lives Matter Ithaca started coming together last fall when local organizers who attended the National BLM conference in Cleveland joined forces with a group of activists and community residents who helped plan a Black Lives Matter teach-in in downtown Ithaca. Over the past several weeks, we have gathered regularly to discuss the need to create a Black political organization in the Ithaca area. We saw a need to seize the political moment. New waves of anti-racist activism are sweeping campuses and communities across the country. How do we help sustain this energy and channel it toward positive change in our area? How do we formalize and consolidate our efforts? In a spirit of solidarity and camaraderie, we began planning an organization that could help create a positive sense of identity among Black people while helping to build a grassroots anti-racist movement. Using Black Lives Matter as an organizing concept, our organization will engage in agitation, mobilization, and education. We will work to revive grassroots traditions of organizing. We will fight the insecurity and marginalization that plague many local Black residents. We will seek fair and decent education, employment, housing, lending, political rights, and public accommodations for all Black people. Black Lives Matter Ithaca works to build Black political strength and foster anti-racist consciousness through grassroots initiatives, political agitation, and community education. So, what is anti-racism? It is far more than not being racist. A passive act that requires no effort and in no way threatens the deep-rooted system of white supremacy. Nor is it colorblindness, the belief that by claiming to disregard color, to not see race, we have somehow defeated the brutal legacy of white supremacy. Anti-racism is a commitment to an explicit, ongoing, uncompromising confrontation with the ideology and concrete realities of white supremacy, realities that surround us every day. Anti-racists recognize white supremacy as an entrenched system of domination that must be met with powerful and relentless resistance. It is not enough to parrot the phrase, "I have a dream," while wallowing in white privilege. It is not enough to declare one's commitment to equality while ignoring the structural violence of class, gender, and sexuality. If we want a democratic society, we have to fight for it. And we have to fight on multiple fronts, including in the streets. We need a bottom-up approach. Black Lives Matter Ithaca intends to prioritize the realities, concerns, and leadership of those who are among the most marginalized, the most excluded. We are committed to building a culture of solidarity along with anti-racists of all colors. Affirmation of blackness is not condemnation of white people. Black political struggle is an essential part of the struggle to democratize society for all. We have decided to take action because we see the distress and insecurity that many of our people face every day in this decadent society. We have come together across political and ideological differences, united in our commitment to anti-racism, anti-sexism, anti-imperialism, and justice for LGBTQ people of color. We are determined to work to create a better future for our children and young adults. We hope you will help us build a culture of solidarity rooted in the principle and practice of anti-racism. Thank you.
The purpose of tonight was to announce the birth of Black Lives Matter Ithaca. It was also to encourage everyone here to acknowledge the realities of the people of color in this community, specifically the Black people in this community. It is to acknowledge the Black children in your children's classrooms and the lives that they live and how you can become agents of social change. Tonight was also to announce the strong wave of solidarity, consciousness, unity, and Black love. The purpose of tonight was to specifically encourage Black people to fight for their liberation, socially, economically, and politically. And as I stand here, I think of all my white friends and colleagues that are here that continuously ask me the question, what can I do as a white person? And what you can do is listen. When you have a colleague that tells you about a microaggression or an experience of racism, you can listen, you can ask questions, but don't invalidate that experience. And you can also begin to love thy neighbor. And when you love thy neighbor, you embody that pain, you embody that empathy, and you begin to self-reflect and think about the ways in which you are perpetuating the status quo and how you can begin to help yourself before you can help someone else. And then you think about help. We don't need help, we need support. We need, for white people and people of color as well, to begin to imagine what a life of love, justice, freedom, and liberation would look like. We need people to think about their privileges, and giving up those privileges isn't a form of oppression, it's a form of equality. So tonight is to welcome you all to become unified and to begin to act, to begin to love everyone in this room and to experience the tragedies that Black people on a daily basis live with. So thank you all for being here tonight.
We wanted this to be an exchange, and we wanted to have open conversation. far too frequently, the communication is going in one direction. So we wanted to open it up, particularly because we're committed, as we said, to building a culture of solidarity, a broader culture of solidarity. And that's a culture that not only does it transcend race, but it also transcends international lines, right? So when we're talking about building an anti-racist culture here in Ithaca, throughout the United States and around the world, we have to also be speaking to questions of anti-blackness, racism, white supremacy, colonialism, occupation, all around the world. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to have some of the folks who just spoke and some of the other organizers with whom we've been working perhaps come forward, and maybe we'll just do some Q&A, and you can make statements or you can ask questions, and let's have maybe a brief conversation.
Easy, get up here, girl.
Oh, I got a, is open for questions? Yes. All right, I do have a question actually, and stuff. I'm familiar, I've been traveling back and forth to Ithaca for the past 10 years. My name is Shango, and I also have noticed that there has been like small grassroots movements that pops up and then, you know, goes in and out of existence, like subatomic particles somehow. And I was just wondering, when you said you was going to reach out to the marginalized and the disenfranchised, what is the strategy of doing that, and what populations do you plan on reaching out to and where?
So I know at our meetings, we tend to talk about different issues about the community, and that word is a loaded word, so we usually ask each other, like, what community are you talking about? And if we're talking about West Village, we're like, well, who's around this table that is from West Village? So we're always calling each other out on who we're talking about, and if someone from that community is in this room, and how we can begin to do that. We also spend a lot of time talking about how to build relationships and build trust, because I think that's a huge thing within any organization and within any grassroots mobilizing.
So, I mean, I think it's critical too, because what you're talking about really is a question of how to transcend the politics of representation, right? So, for example, we have Obama in the White House, but that hasn't changed the realities of masses of poor people, working people, undocumented people, people who are struggling every single day, right? As a matter of fact, it's placed a very comforting face on this system of imperialism and global capitalism, right? So in other words, we have to transcend this politics of representation, and we have to get back to a grassroots politics where people are in the streets, where people are on the front lines, and doing so in a way that, again, tries to foreground, place in the forefront the realities of people who are the most excluded, the most marginalized. And you know, I think that the honest answer is that we're still working through those questions. We are a very diverse, politically diverse, theologically diverse group of people, group of organizers from different walks of life. And we're struggling with ourselves and struggling through these questions, but we're doing so with a commitment to a politics that is grassroots, a politics that's bottom up, a politics that's not simply concerned with the conditions and the realities of a middle-class elite, but that's purposely trying to get to the roots of these problems of inequality here in our community and in our society. And we're inviting you to struggle along with us in creative ways and in democratic ways to find answers.
I'd like to talk about that just a little bit. I'd like to say that, for one, I've heard a lot about these little small pocket, different movements, and I want people to kind of understand the movement never stopped. It just pushed off in different places. So for me, when I think about bringing the voices that are not usually heard, I think of people who are having this same conversation, right? In their kitchens, on the phone with their friends, but they don't think that their voice matters, right? So they won't come out in this arena, but bringing their voices here. So I don't think we should ever not think that they're not in the room. If I'm in the room, I'm representing them, because that's where I come from. I was born and raised in Harlem. I was around for a lot of movements, and I represent them when I come. Because you can best to believe, when I leave here tonight, I'll be that one on the phone telling them, this is what happened, this is how many white people was there, this is how many black people was here, I didn't see your face. Now, what do you want me to take back to the community or to this group? Like, the movement has never stopped. It's just that we got our balls back. So we go.
I have a question really quickly, and I'm just wondering, because I know that I've talked to two young men already that had some pretty unfriendly confrontations with the police. And my question is simple. As a black community organization, whereas I, as a black man who may have had some problems with the officer, where am I able to get in touch with you? Because if I'm one of those kids who are not in the social circle, in the inner circle, or an activist, just being black and enjoying my life, and I come across a problem, is there an 800 number? Is there, are you that established where people in the community know where to go if they have a problem with Black lives or their own Black life? And it's well publicized. I'm not talking about the inner circle that we all see every time we go to these meetings. I'm talking about the people at West Village, the kid that I had a problem with. I didn't have the problem, he had the problem, but he didn't know where to go. There's a few others, and they just, rather say, you know what, they didn't take me to jail, they just pulled me off in a cop car, you know, harassed me for 20 minutes and let me go. And they leave it like that. And I said, no, that's wrong, they shouldn't even done that. They just think when they get out the car. But they don't, so what I'm asking is, where do you see yourselves as an organization where these people can say, well, I know who to call to stop this nonsense?
Well, I can start. So, to get in contact with Black Lives Matter Ithaca, social media-wise, we have a Facebook, we also have a Twitter. So you can follow those links, you can like the page, and you can send us messages, and we'll answer things like that. Also, by you being here today, now you know where we are. So, if you know of anyone who's up here, again, our contact information, or anybody's information, you can bring it to us. But again, we are community-based and grassroots, so bringing it to us will only do so much. When you bring it to us, we're also going to bring it back to the community, see what we can do as a whole. We're not the representatives who will take the action. We're taking action together. So asking us where to get in contact, the best way right now with the way technology works is either Facebook or the Twitter. We also have an email address, but I forgot the email address right now. However, because you're here now, you'll be a resource to connect us with people at West Village. And people up here already have connections with West Village as well, or any other neighborhood. So being the grassroots organization that we are, you have to bring it to us, or bring it up and talk in circles or in spaces. Not talking circles to entity, but talking in circles in general around the community. Then you bring it to us as well. So we're truly grassroots, so we're not just a board of trustees or like the end all, be all. Right. We're just a part of the community like anyone else. Okay.
Playing off of what Bobby said, I attended the last Black Lives Matter event that happened here. For the people who were on the stage, I became familiar with their faces. I want to say in November, I was in a situation where I was called out of my name 3 times and was told not to be offended by it. It's not like it's in my DNA to be offended by my employer. And then I was fired. From there, I thought about everyone that was on the stage and I went to them. So seeing our faces and knowing where we are in the community is big, you know, and you can always find us. I'm sure some of us are uphill, some of us are down here, but just knowing our faces and being familiar, like Bobby said, with the page, you can definitely, you know, let us know what you need to hear.
I work for the Multicultural Resource Center, and we're always open for any kind of issue that's happening, and we will do all we can do to connect you to who you need to be connected to.
Well, I guess what Nicole was saying is those relationships are important. Because even though those MRCs there, Multi-Resource Center, and talk in circles, but if you get some young 19-year-old boy who doesn't, and all he's worried is playing hip-hop and doing this, staying in this little teenage world, and he has a problem, if he doesn't know one of you guys on the stage, or if he doesn't know about MRC, so I guess what I'm trying to say, I wish there was more public, just more of a focus of marketing. A really blitz of it, to let people know in the whole community, a really marketing blitz and say, hey, we are here, we want to hear the stories, we want to hear about the complaints, and to know, so I think sometimes, it's just really in not small areas, but it's just not a market blitz on the shack.
Let me respond very, very briefly to that. So listen, when you market something, you have something to sell, right? I think it's a dangerous model when I think we have to resist letting the language of capitalism seep into our movements, because you can't consume a movement, right? You have to build a movement from the bottom up. And the truth is that we're standing here struggling to articulate a desire to build a grassroots movement. And the truth is that happens painstakingly over time. So regardless of the pronouncements, you can say that this is your commitment, or this is your political outlook. But the truth is that happens through, in part, what you're talking about, person-to-person context. And the other thing is that you can't build a movement by committee, right? You can't say, well, I represent this, right? Ultimately, if it's going to be a sustainable movement, it has to be indigenous, it has to be grassroots, and it has to be built by the people themselves. It has to be a mass movement, a bottom-up movement. So you can't build a kind of bureaucratic structure. You can't build another layer of bureaucracy and say we're the movement. Right? So we have to get back to these grassroots organizing traditions. That takes a lot of work. And we're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way. Right? But we're asking you to struggle with us toward a vision of grassroots resistance, because we think that's what's going to finally democratize our community and democratize our society.
And I would just add to that, the purpose of this gathering was in fact to it was to inform, it was to broadcast, and we're a group that is just getting started. There was much deliberation over this decision, whether or not to even announce this. Like we said, we are a group of various backgrounds, various political ideologies, so we're just getting started. And we're starting here right now. And I think going off of what everybody said, just building those relationships with folks, and really cultivating the grassroots essence of this movement that we're trying to go is the way that we're going to try to do it. We have a lot of days ahead of us, a lot of work ahead of us.
So building on that, I think you're right on that it's about relationships. Solidarity starts with caring about another person, a person who's having a problem, a person who can help fight back or find a solution. So I would say that what everyone in this room could do is make a commitment to tell at least one other person who wasn't here but has some interest that, hey, there's a group, Black Lives Matter Ithaca, they're acknowledging the problem that's right here in our own community. They're committed to working with it across a variety of fronts. If you know somebody who needs that kind of support or wants to get involved, I can connect you with who that is, because I bet most people in this room know somebody, one person, out of this great organizing group, or can ask somebody who knows somebody. So this is the awesomeness of living in a small town community where people care and are energetic enough to talk to each other. So I think if everybody just tried to talk to one other person, maybe 2 or 3 or 4, and let them know this is going on, we could magnify the impact in just a few days. 5 times as many people are in the room could know and understand what this is about.
I think I agree with what you're saying, saying, but I think the biggest problem or the biggest issue for me has been that this town is thought to be really liberal and really progressive, but in some situations, specifically the Ithaca neighborhood housing project that was going on Hancock Street, there were so many people that were against the project that would help so many people that were working class and poor. Most of these people that were knocking on my friends' doors were people that would call themselves progressive. And they're like, these people need this type of housing, but not in my backyard, not in my neighborhood. So I think we really have to like check ourselves when we say that we're liberal or we're progressive, or we want this for these people, but just not right next to us.
I'm in awe of leadership right now in front, and I'm new to the area, but not new to this work. And I believe it's people-to-people connections, but I think it's organization-to-organization connections where true solidarity happens. So as a white person who identifies as anti-racist, I believe my job is to organize other white people to then act in solidarity organizationally with the formation that is now BLM Ithaca. So I know there's work happening, anti-racist work in this community, but until an organization steps up and says, we are a solidarity organization with Black Lives Matter, I'd be interested in putting energy into building that solidarity group that can be looked to say, what are you doing to organize white folks to support Black Lives Matter? So more of a statement than anything, but just really thank you for your leadership.
But there is a white group that's doing a surge.
Are they explicitly in
They're
solidarity
explicit.
with Black Lives Matter?
So showing up for racial justice, even if somebody that you can talk to.
Stand up, yep, stand up, yep, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there are groups that.
Yeah, we need, just talk to me. Not the advertise. You're good, everybody can talk.
So, I think that as a member of the oppressive color, language, age, sex, ability, with the education that I've gotten through really fine people, I would say that this idea is ideal. It has to happen. It's a beautiful thing to have in Ithaca. My connection with the movement at this point is a bunch of Facebook pages that I'm on. I'm thrilled you have a Facebook page. I would say that, like, when it comes to this Facebook page, if someone would say, look, I'm going to post this event that happened to someone that I know on the page. Does anybody have any ideas what we can do about this? And it seems to me that somebody could then go to a newspaper or anywhere and say what happened, just to get the idea out, to say this event took place and it shouldn't be ignored. Something that should be recognized and cataloged and remembered, and the date and the person's name. Something serious, you know. Because when it comes to white people, I guess I can be an authority on white people. And I can say that what they don't know, what the three things they really don't know that they need to know is, one, the difference between racism and prejudice. There's a solid, clear-cut difference between racism and prejudice. They don't know. Nice people, the people who are knocking on those doors, doing what they think is maybe protecting their property values or something like that, they don't know. Or if they do know, then God forgive them. But there's a difference between racism and prejudice that needs to be taught. So clearly part of the movement, I think, would be, you know, if you want me, hey Nick, oh, by the way, for any of the state police or federal officers here, my name is Nicholas Salvatore Martielli. You can look me up on Facebook or the internet and find out all about me if you want. And I'll answer any question anybody wants to know. And what I would say is that if you said, hey, you white guy, we want you to talk to some other, that's right, we want you to talk to some other people about the difference between racism and prejudice. I'd be happy to do that.
I'm going to slightly interject. So,
sure, man.
You said before, you said the white people need to learn these new things that you do next to this. We mentioned earlier that we have showing up for racial justice. They explicitly mobilize and teach white people about all the things you're speaking of, and that's what they do. Surge does it. Showing up for racial justice, they do. Not necessarily, that's not necessarily the mission of what we're doing here.
Then I mean, that's fine. Then there's no problem. I mean, that's great. but I think there's a lot of people who still in this room probably don't know what I'm
I think
talking
another
about.
problem with what you're saying is that Black people and people of color didn't create racism. We didn't create the system that we live in, so the fact that we have to continue to teach white people about it is mentally draining.
Well, yeah, no, I don't think that you have to do any teaching at all. I offer myself if you would like.
But the whole premise that the problem is a lack of awareness.
Yeah.
Right? That's a profound misunderstanding of the problem, right? Whiteness is a structure of power, just like patriarchy, right? Just like capitalism. So therefore, people benefit from capitalism, and people benefit from white supremacy. So when you start to move against white supremacy, the same way when you start to move against capitalism, you're going to run into resistance. Right? So you don't necessarily go to those who are resisting you and say, well, let's talk about the difference between racism and prejudice. Perhaps that's a useful conversation, perhaps it isn't. What we have to recognize is that these are structures of power, right? They're deeply embedded within the foundations of our society.
Yes.
And so that when we move against them, we're going to encounter opposition. It's not simply about, changing people's minds.
No,
right? It's about struggling against these structures.
Certainly. I don't mean to say that I can find a problem.
Does any person?
Oh, I was. Okay, sure. All right.
I just had a question for those who want to be a part of initiatives that are going on. Is the organization taking ideas or projects that are going on that someone of color could get involved in? Because I like doing, I'm not really big on talking.
Right.
So is there going to be a meeting or a committee that's going to talk about what the next steps are? So like the next call to action, the next organizing event, whether it be a rally, whether it be a march, whether it be a sit-in, so like foot soldier activities for individuals. Would that be publicized, or is that being created as we speak?
So I think one of the things that we should mention is that in March, we're planning some kind of thing, some kind of follow-up to this. Sometimes incidents occur before that, and we might have to move and organize around that. But tentatively, just look out for March. Just look out for March, and we will be organizing around. You can also reach us through the Facebook page. Anybody in this room wants our contact information, especially people of color who want our contact information.
And what was any ideas? So if you have any ideas, or if anything happens in the community that you want us to know about, or not us know about, let the organization know about. Again, we're grassroots, so we don't want you to think that we're some board of trustees or some committee or something. We are a grassroots organization, so if you, as a member, as an important part of this community, if you have any issues, please let us know. Whether you want to message us on Facebook, and we can address it for you, but we would also want your help to address it, because we don't want to take the credit for addressing something that you brought to us. So remember that we are co-laborers in this. I don't want to say ministry because it's not a church. We're co-laborers in this thing that we're doing.
Sure. I'm glad that the subject came up of call to action. And what do we do next? We roll from here. We've been talking about action the last couple of days since the Top Next Door program has been trying to pass through, and I think it probably has been passed through tonight, or it will be after the council meeting.
Dave, can you mention to everyone in the room what it is, because everyone might not know?
Okay, so the Top Next Door program is currently active in West Village, and there's some controversy whether it's a good thing or bad thing between people that live there, but I believe as a collective understanding between the isolated areas such as West Village, Chestnut, Apartments, North Side, South Side, you know, Cornell, and what other influences there are. You know, the housing issue creates these issues, but you can't just say, oh, that's just the way it is. You gotta say the infrastructure is set up in a certain way where they're not fighting for our needs. And as well, we have failed our own community by not standing up for those in West Village until they start putting cops there. We read on some Facebook messages, well, how can they come to us before these cops came? You know, we stand with responsibility. So maybe somebody else can explain it a little bit better. I'm kind of just want to finish this idea.
They are going to allow free rent to police officers that live in the complex in West Village. It's a program that they adopted from New York City. They can live rent-free in an apartment in that community. And that's pretty much what I do.
Well, it's half, it's not for free. They get half. They pay half of whatever the current rent is. Yeah, so there's a whole lot of stuff to that.
No, yeah, he's a resident of West Village.
No, I'm not a resident.
I thought you said you were outside.
It's another problem, but.
Well, so it's a less than subtle way to say that the cops are what the solution is, and prioritizing, you know, cops, and that they can just move on it, you know, and it's a culture that we need to stop. It's an idea. It's a battle of ideologies. What, you know, these solutions can be for our communities. They impose these ideologies on our communities. It's racist. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm supportive of Black Lives Matter movement, because, you know, you're my brother, and I know we grew up together. Like that's, you know, that's how it feels. And I guess I have a lot of emotion right now, and I'm not necessarily speaking correctly right now.
That's all right. And to comment next door, I'm saying this one a little bit. I think that's wrong because I live on Hudson Street, right on the tail of Hudson Street, and these college kids are allowed to make all kinds of noise, all from 7 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning, throwing beer bottles, hooting and hollering, doing whatever they please. But they ain't a cop next door going on Hudson Street. They're noisy, they're loud, they can carry open containers up and down the street. Now one cop car will stop one of them college kids. And like all they have coming from West Village, coming down there with all that. The whole SWAT team. And that's, I think what he was talking about, that's the injustice, because you can't say, okay, we're going to have peace and calmness over here in West Village, but the South Hill can act like a fool anytime they want because they're at a higher institution. That's not right, and that's not fair.
I wanted to speak to something that was brought up previously regarding movements. Somebody had asked. Well, one of the things that I've been working on is called Real Blunt, REELBLUNT, and it's a multimedia movement based in Ithaca in order for people to express their voices. I want to get in the community and be of the community, to hear these voices, specifically people of color, and how we could come to resolve these problems that we do face here. How many people here have a job? Like, I'll show up like high hands because I can't really see. All right. And how many people, hold your hands up still, please keep your hands up. How many people here work in predominantly white jobs? So I think that's like a problem we see right here. You know, recently, if we're going to talk about poverty, we're going to talk about employment, we're going to talk about politics, we're going to talk about these things. I've been coming back and forth to Ithaca for the past 10 years. And I have a really good resume, done a lot of really good work right here in Ithaca, built databases, never was hired, was always contracted and didn't let go, always. Worked for Cornell, ISC, Department of Social Services, and Seaboard, Borg Warner, you name it, I did it. I go to these employment agencies around here, and I have yet, in the 10 years that I have been coming back and forth to Ithaca, I have not seen one person of color in any of these employment agencies. Staff Kings, Kelly Service, Express, Manpower, you name it. Not one in 10 years. And I've seen postings for people, administrative support. I just simply can't believe that there's no people of color in this town that knows how to type 35 words a minute and knows how to use Word. Impossible, impossible. And I'm sure they have applied to these positions. I've noticed in these positions, I never made $9 an hour in my life. That's my word. I'm working right now at Vanguard Press with individuals who are making more than me that don't have a GED, and they are white individuals. They put me there, and they do this to a lot of people of color here. They'll downplay them. They'll put them in marginalized jobs, lower wage jobs. They won't give them the jobs that's $20 an hour, $25 an hour, et cetera, et cetera. They don't do that. That's a big issue and a big concern for me. I wrote the EEOC. I'm in the process of doing a formal complaint against employment agencies here. And, you know, that's something that needs to be tackled. And all of you that work in white spaces, you need to really challenge and be like, why is no people of color here? There's this company, Rosie, I applied to, and I asked the guy, specifically, it's a startup company that go get groceries, all right? They don't have one black driver to deliver groceries. And their front end team is all white. And I asked him, I said, do you have, he said it's a diverse place. This is what he told me. He said it's a diverse place. We have diversity here. I guess he was speaking of class, not ethnicity. And so I was like, really? I was like, well, where's the people of color? You got any people of color? He was like, no, we don't. So I was like, would I be the first? And he was like, possibly.
These are the issues that we plan on tackling.
So yeah, these issues, but not only that, I think media, and that's something that I'm really working, you know, on and trying to actually come to fruition. I think media also is a way to do that. If you say this is the core group of the Black Lives Matter of Ithaca, I really would love for all of you to come at some point and utilize the services of the public access to reach people who may not be here. Like Ms. Phoebe said, she called people. Well, if people could sit down, you know, at their home, turn on the TV and be like, okay, so to hear these voices and know how to get in contact with them, I think we'll reach a bigger audience too.
Here that are predominantly white. All the news medias that are here, some of the articles that they could write about is doing exposés on the medical center, the Human Service Coalition. There are plenty of places, instead of writing articles about West Hill and the violence that's there, we should be talking about all the organizations here that are perpetuating structural racism.
And you're welcome to come to these meetings and have that conversation too. This dialogue, you know, talk more.
No, I'm down. No, I'm right. The police don't like me. Period. No.
Hi. So I just want to thank you guys for organizing this and everybody for coming tonight. So I guess I'm a grad student at Cornell, and one of the things that I hear, I talk to some undergrads whenever I'm in the Wani or whatever on the bus, and I hear a lot of black students at Cornell say, you know, we don't feel a part of this community. You know, we feel like we are the tokens of Cornell. We need a quota. And talking to my friends tonight, my white friends, they're like, oh, well, Cornell's like the most liberal like school ever. Like, you know, everybody's so down to earth. Everybody's so like open to change and things. And you hear so much like that at Cornell. And I will say this, I grew up in the South, went to school in the South, taught in the South, and I've never felt so discriminated against until I came to Cornell. Ever. Ever. And I think that that is probably the sentiment of a lot of the students here. But when you think about the North versus the South, you think about the South being like this horrible racist place, and the North is like this, like it's greener on the other side and it's not.
Right.
And so what I would say is that not only do I know the body goes to Cornell, but I not only challenge like students, undergrads, grads, PhD, law students, whatever at Cornell, but also at Ithaca College, to get the word out about what's going on and to come here. Because I'm sure there's more Black students at Cornell and Ithaca College than we see here tonight, you know. And yes, this is the first meeting, you know, but this, somebody asked the question right before I left the talk tonight about how do we sustain this movement, right? You hear about the Black Panther Party, right? You hear about all these things in the past, but they have kind of settled down, right? They've never gone away, but they've settled down. So how do we keep this movement going, right? And we know that there's college students who have done amazing things in the past. We have to make sure that we get those people out here, right? Yeah, they may not be residents of Ithaca, but while they are here, they are a part of this community. And we have to make sure that we keep that going. So that's what I would challenge all of us to do, is to, even if you don't know somebody, you see somebody in the way, if they want to go to college, I don't care if they look like they go to college or not, make sure that they know that these type of things are going on so that they can come and be a part of it.
Thank you.
Any more questions, comments?
Did y'all have a question? Yeah, somebody said, think about how I could give up white privilege, so I'd like to give up white privilege for less. But I have to think about it. Any ideas? I got no idea what to do.
Well, let me say this. People have to understand, people of conscience need to understand what whiteness is. Okay? Whiteness is a construct. Whiteness is a historical project. Okay? Whiteness has no meaning apart from conquest. Right? If it weren't for conquest, we wouldn't be standing here talking about whiteness. Whiteness is a construct that involves incredible violence. Right? And whiteness is also blindness. Right? Whiteness is theft. That's what whiteness is. There's no other explanation for whiteness. I mean, what is whiteness? Whiteness is theft, and whiteness is blindness. And it's an inability to see oneself. It is emotional and psychological underdevelopment, right? So when people of color, that doesn't mean that white people, right, are evil. It means that you are degraded by white supremacy. Right? That you're degraded, that your humanity, right, is underdeveloped by white supremacy. And you're incapable of seeing the tremendous violence that we're doing to ourselves in our community and around the world because of this lie of whiteness, right? So it means that we have to repair ourselves, particularly those of us who are closest to the centers of power. And that doesn't just mean white men, but it also means men of color, right, who enjoy the privileges of being perceived as heterosexual, who enjoy the privileges of class, right, that we all have to repair ourselves. But at the center of that is the problem of white supremacy, that you can't speak to class inequality if you don't speak to white supremacy, that you can't speak to violence against LGBTQ people if you don't speak to the problem of white supremacy. So we have to confront the problem of anti-blackness. That's the fundamental contradiction of our society. And everything else, the contradiction of class, etc., is deeply tied up with this question of white supremacy, right? So when people of color, black people, say, come and struggle in solidarity with us, we're not saying come help us, we're saying come save yourself. Before it's too late.
I can give up chocolate for life, but I'm like trying to get something I can do.
You're making a joke of it, but I'm going to give you some reality. What you did tonight was give up white privilege. You stood here a lot longer than you had to, and you did it why? So you gave up white privilege tonight. And if you want to continue to do that, keep coming back.
couple more, maybe, my sister.
Yeah, so I'm a freshman at Ithaca College, and I'm here because I pitched the story idea because I wanted to come here. So covering what happened at Cornell earlier today, and then also the opening of Ithaca Black Lives Matter for the radio. But I'm just curious because I've seen a couple faces, but I don't actually know the names. So could you guys just introduce yourselves and say who you are and what you do?
My name is Jodian. I am a resident in the community here. I live right around the corner from here. I came to the group just out of my experience here and what I've experienced being so young. I would have never thought that I would experience it being so young. Being so young. Like, I'm a baby. So I came to the group just out of knowing what I know, what my background was.
Hi everyone, my name is Anango Kasango. I am an Ithaca resident. I'm also a PhD student at Cornell, and I'm also a performer in the area. And I was largely sort of brought into the fold thanks to Dubian. I'm not even sure how I know Dubian, but he has kept me sort of informed and really helped me to make sense of some of the things that I'm dealing with and thinking about in my own life. So that's why I arrived at this place.
My name is Nicole Lefebvre. I am a resident of Ithaca. I graduated from Ithaca College. I was born and raised in Harlem. I work at the Public Service Center. I also coordinated the trip to Cleveland to the Black Lives convening, and that's kind of how I got into this specific work.
So my name is Dubian. I graduated from IC last year. I work at MRC now, doing mostly resource development. I'm editor for a newspaper called The Colonizer.
Check it out.
And I guess I got involved in this work mainly through the activist circles. I've been a part of a number of street mobilizations, candlelit visuals, rallies, stuff like that, in those pockets that happen with it. So that's the reason.
I'm Russell. I'm a historian.
Phoebe, I'm from Harlem. I have my PhD in streetology. I'm here because I love black people. I love people of color. I am very sensitive and I'm very feeling. And so when someone else hurts, I feel it really close to my heart. That's why I'm here.
That's good.
I'm Bobby Smith. I've been in Ithaca some 5 years now. I came here for graduate school. I'm also a PhD student at Cornell. I live right here downtown. I'm on the Tompkins County Food Policy Council, which just started this year. So my work is largely around food justice activism, where I discuss race, class, and local food systems, specifically here in Ithaca, New York. So I study Ithaca and food justice. So that's why I'm here today, because I love black people, as black as I am. And I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should wrap up soon. Brother, we heard 2 comments from you, so I think we should.
It's just very important.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just very important, I think. I just wanted to speak to about getting out in the community and things of that nature. Like when I was here, I started a food program because I was going on doors in West Village, in Parkside, in Northside, knocking on doors and asking people, being that you deal with food policy, asking people how they felt about going to Green Star. And I had organized to go to these farms and pick up surplus food and give them out in the neighborhood along with a newsletter called Crossroads. I think if you really want to reach out and grassroots and deal with the people in West Village, in Northside, in Parkside, in these communities, these isolated communities of color predominantly, then people need to come out their zone and actually go there. I'm more than willing to do it. Because because I've done it and I know it. I deal with the individuals that sell the drugs, that use the drugs, that go to court and everything else. I deal with the gutter because that's where I come from and that's where my heart is at, and I know that's where the disenfranchised is at, and that's where I know the people that don't have a voice or a medium to actually express themselves are there, and they feel the things that's going on in this day and time. And you know, if you want to start a street team, I'm more than willing to be part of that. So that's all I want to contribute.
Thank you so much to everybody for coming out. As you can see, I mean, the truth is that this is very much still coming together, that we're struggling towards a vision of change, and we're asking you to struggle along with us to build this culture of solidarity. So tonight is just the beginning. We really appreciate your presence, and we look forward to struggling with you in the future.